I used to think turning 18 meant finally being seen as an adult. I was wrong. It was the day I found out my parents had already decided who mattered and who didn't. There was no party, no cake, just my dad asking me to sit down at the kitchen table like I was about to hear a medical diagnosis. His voice was steady, careful, the kind people use when they think they're being reasonable. "Harper," he said, "we need to be honest with you." That word, honest, should have been my warning. He told me they never saved a single dollar for my college. Not because they couldn't, not because of an emergency, but because, in his exact words, "We honestly didn't think you'd actually go or amount to much." I remember smiling, nodding, saying nothing, because when the truth hits too hard, sometimes your body chooses silence just to survive it. I stayed at the table after my dad finished talking, my hands folded in my lap like I was the one being evaluated. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, each second stretching longer than the last. My mom finally turned off the stove and joined us, wiping her hands on a towel she didn't need. "We just want what's best for you," she said softly, like that would smooth everything over. I looked from her to my dad. "So, what exactly is that?" I asked. My dad sighed, the way he always did when he thought a conversation was becoming inconvenient. "Harper, college is expensive. We had to be realistic." "Realistic for who?" I asked before I could stop myself. He leaned back in his chair. "For us. For the family." That word again. Family. It sounded inclusive, but I was starting to realize it had conditions attached. "So you saved for Ethan," I said carefully, "but not for me." My dad didn't deny it. That was the part that hurt the most. "Ethan showed promise early on," he said. "He's always been focused, motivated. You were different. Different." I waited for my mom to say something. Anything. But she just nodded, her lips pressed together in that familiar, conflicted line. "What does that even mean?" I asked. "I work part-time, I got good grades, I applied to schools on my own." My dad shrugged. "We didn't think you'd follow through." The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were leaning in to listen. "So you decided for me," I said. "Years ago." "It wasn't like that," my mom cut in quickly. "We just thought a little struggle might help you build character." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I might have said something I couldn't take back. "Struggle," I repeated. "You mean watching me figure it out alone while you paid for Ethan's car and his college fund? That's not fair," my dad snapped. "We're talking about different kids with different needs." I stood up so abruptly my chair scraped against the floor. "No," I said, my voice shaking despite my best effort. "You're talking about different expectations." Silence followed. Heavy. Uncomfortable. My dad glanced at the clock, as if hoping time itself would rescue him. "Look," he said, standing too. "We didn't call you in here to argue. We just wanted you to understand where we're coming from." I nodded slowly. "I do," I said. And for the first time that night, it was true. They weren't confused. They weren't struggling. They had made a choice. I went to my room afterward and closed the door gently, like I was afraid loud movements might break something fragile. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall, replaying every word, every pause, every shrug. 18 years old, and I finally understood my place. Later that night, as I packed a small suitcase for college, hand-me-down clothes, an old laptop, a folder of scholarship applications, I heard my parents laughing in the living room. Ethan's voice joined in, light and carefree, asking what was for dessert. No one came to check on me. And that was when it hit me. This wasn't just about money. It was about belief. They believed in him, and they never had in me. That realization hurt more than anything they'd said out loud. I moved out 2 weeks later, not in a dramatic, storming out way. There were no slammed doors or shouted goodbyes. I packed quietly, folding my clothes into an old suitcase that still smelled faintly of dust and fabric softener. My mom hovered in the doorway the entire time, asking small, useless questions. "Do you have enough hangers? Are you sure that apartment is safe? You know you can always come home if things don't work out." I nodded at all the right moments. I said okay and thanks and I'll be fine, because that was easier than explaining how home no longer felt like a place that belonged to me. My new apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom, 1 window, thin walls that let in the sound of traffic and neighbors arguing late at night. The heater rattled when it turned on, like it was threatening to quit at any moment. But it was mine, and that mattered. Classes started. Then work. Then more work. Mornings at a grocery store, evenings at a diner, weekends wherever I could pick up extra hours. I learned how to calculate time in coffee breaks and how to stretch leftovers longer than they were meant to last. I learned that exhaustion could become normal if you let it. And every few weeks my phone would buzz. "You've been really distant lately," my mom texted one night. "Is everything okay?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Just busy with school and work," I wrote. Which was true. Just not the whole truth. Because distance wasn't something that happened overnight. It wasn't me being dramatic or ungrateful. It was the natural result of realizing I was on my own and had been for longer than I wanted to admit. When I visited home, the house felt the same. Same couch, same framed photos, same family calendar on the fridge, still color-coded. Only now I noticed what was missing. Me. There were new photos of Ethan. Him standing next to his car. Him smiling at a campus tour. Him holding an acceptance letter like it was a trophy. My parents talked about his future as if it were a shared project they were all building together. "And if he doesn't like that major, we'll help him switch," my dad said one evening, passing the salt. "No point forcing him into something that doesn't fit." I swallowed hard. "Must be nice," I said quietly. My mom frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I replied automatically. I was getting good at that. Before I left, my mom hugged me a little tighter than usual. "You don't have to push us away, Harper," she said. "We worry about you." I almost laughed. They worried now. From a distance. From the safety of knowing they'd already chosen who they were willing to invest in. As I drove back to my apartment that night, I realized something uncomfortable. They thought I was distant because I was angry. The truth was worse. I was distant because I was learning how to survive without expecting anything from them at all. By my second semester, exhaustion wasn't something that came and went. It was just there, constant, humming under my skin like background noise I couldn't turn off. My days blurred together. I'd wake up before sunrise to open the grocery store, stocking shelves while the world was still half asleep. I'd rush to class smelling faintly of cardboard and cleaning spray, take notes with fingers that still ached from lifting boxes, then head straight to the diner for the evening shift. Some nights, I didn't get home until after midnight. I learned how to function on 4 hours of sleep, sometimes less. Meanwhile, my parents' lives went on as if I were a footnote. One afternoon, while I was on break behind the diner, I scrolled through my mom's social media. She'd posted another photo of Ethan, this time standing next to his car, arms slung casually over the hood. "So proud of our boy," the caption read. "Big things ahead." I stared at the screen, grease-stained apron still tied around my waist, and felt that familiar, hollow ache settle in my chest. A few days later, my dad called. "Hey, Harper," he said, his tone light. "Quick question. Couldn't take a letter perceive had Darian my me. I already knew it wouldn't be quick. Do you still have that laptop we bought you years ago?" he asked. "The one I use for school?" I said slowly. "Yeah." "Well, Ethan's is acting up," my dad continued, unfazed. "Since you're always working, we figured you probably don't need yours as much. He's applying to colleges now, and it would really help him." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "You mean the laptop I write papers on?" I finally said. "The one I use for class every day?" There was a pause. Then a small, awkward laugh. "Oh. I just assumed you'd upgraded by now." I laughed too short and sharp. "No," I said. "I haven't." "Well," he replied, already backing away from the conversation. "Just thought I'd ask." He didn't apologize. He didn't even sound embarrassed. After I hung up, I sat there staring at the cracked screen in my hands. That laptop had survived spills, late-night essays, and countless deadlines. And to him it was just spare. That was the moment I stopped feeling overlooked and started feeling used. It wasn't just that they supported Ethan more. It was that they saw my struggle as flexible, borrowable, expendable. That night, I walked home instead of taking the bus, letting the cold air sting my face until my thoughts slowed. I realized something I hadn't wanted to face before. To my parents, I wasn't the child they were building a future for. I was the backup plan. I didn't fall apart all at once. It happened slowly, in pieces so small no one noticed them breaking off. I got sick in late October. Not just a cold one of those deep, bone-heavy illnesses that makes even standing feel like too much. I missed 2 shifts at the diner, which meant my paycheck came up short. Rent didn't care that I had a fever. Neither did the electric bill. For a moment, I considered calling my parents. I stared at my phone for a long time before finally texting my mom. I'm really sick. Missed work. Things are a little tight right now. 3 hours passed before she replied. Oh no. I'm sorry, honey. Make sure you drink tea and rest. Maybe Ethan can bring you some soup if he has time. If he has time. He didn't come. 2 days later, when I finally dragged myself to the mailbox, there was an envelope waiting for me. My mom's handwriting. Inside was a cheap greeting card with a smiling puppy on the front and a single $10 bill taped inside. You've always been a fighter, she wrote. We believe in you. Love, Mom and Dad, $10. I sat on the floor of my apartment, the card still open in my hands, and laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, but because something inside me finally gave up trying to understand them. That same night, my dad posted online about buying Ethan a new camera. A necessary investment, he called it. Over $1,000, because Ethan had an eye for things. I didn't comment. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt empty. That was the real breaking point, not the money, not the favoritism, not even the words they'd said to me on my birthday. It was the realization that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be enough in their eyes to deserve the same care. So I stopped reaching out. I stopped explaining. I stopped hoping that one day they'd suddenly see me differently. Because hope, I learned, can be just another way of letting yourself get hurt. And from that moment on, I made a quiet decision, one that would change everything. If they were comfortable letting me struggle, then I would stop letting them see how much it cost me. Something shifted after that night on my apartment floor, not in a dramatic movie scene way. There was no sudden burst of confidence, no speech to the mirror. What changed was quieter and far more dangerous. I stopped trying to be understood. I didn't call home anymore. I didn't update my parents on my grades, my schedule, or how tired I was. When my mom texted how's school going, I replied with one word, fine. It was easier to let them believe I was still barely keeping my head above water. In a strange way, their low expectations became a kind of camouflage. Instead of explaining myself, I focused on surviving smarter. I went to the financial aid office and asked questions I should have asked a year earlier. I learned about emergency grants, tuition credits, programs no one ever mentioned unless you pushed. I picked up tutoring shifts on campus quiet rooms, whiteboards, students just as desperate as I was. I sold old textbooks online. I skipped the bus and walked when I could. I was still exhausted, but now there was direction behind it. For the first time, I wasn't working just to stay afloat. I was working towards something. Around that time, Ethan decided he wanted to apply to my university. My mom called, excited. Isn't it funny? She said. You two might end up on the same campus. Funny wasn't the word I would have chosen. He's going to need help with his applications, she added. You know how this works now. You can guide him. The same way no one had guided me. A week later, I found out Ethan had listed my name as a reference for a competitive research assistant position. No warning, no heads up. Just assumed I'd say yes. When the professor asked me about him, I felt the weight of that moment settle in my chest. I could have lied. I could have smoothed things over. Instead, I told the truth. Calmly. Professionally. I said Ethan was creative, but that he struggled with consistency, that he wasn't always prepared, that he might not be ready for a research-heavy role. I didn't sabotage him. I just didn't save him. Later that night, Ethan called me. Did you seriously say that about me? He demanded. You used me as a reference without asking. I replied evenly. What did you expect? There was a long silence. Then, colder. You could have helped me. I closed my eyes. I could have lied for you, I said. That's not the same thing. He hung up. I waited for the backlash from my parents. It never came. Either Ethan hadn't told them or he had, and they'd decided it wasn't worth addressing. That silence told me everything. They still thought I was the struggling one, the background character. the kid who needed pressure to stay motivated. So I let them think that. Because what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that while they were busy planning Ethan's future, I was quietly building my own. And for the first time, I wasn't doing it to prove them wrong. I was doing it because I was done being small. The moment was coming. I could feel it. They just had no idea how close they were to watching everything they believed fall apart. Orientation week arrived louder than I expected. The campus buzzed with nervous energy, parents dragging suitcases, freshmen staring at buildings like they were monuments, staff shouting directions into the chaos. I had signed up weeks earlier to help with orientation events, mostly for the extra stipend and free meals. What I hadn't expected was how perfectly the timing would line up. I was assigned to speak on a student success panel. My parents didn't know. Ethan didn't know. They thought orientation was just paperwork and campus tours. A formality. Another milestone for Ethan, another thing they could proudly attend together. I spotted them the moment I stepped into the auditorium. My dad stood near the aisle, scanning the room like he belonged there. My mom adjusted her jacket, smiling at other parents. Ethan sat between them, relaxed, confident, already acting like this place was his. They didn't see me. Not until my name was called. "And next," the moderator said into the microphone, smiling warmly, "we have Harper Miller, one of our research fellows and scholarship recipients." I felt my heartbeat in my ears as I stood. The lights were bright, the room suddenly very quiet. My mom's smile froze. My dad straightened slowly. Ethan's head snapped up. I took the microphone and breathed in. "I wasn't supposed to be here," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside my chest. Not because I wasn't capable, but because the people who were supposed to believe in me didn't. A ripple moved through the audience. Parents shifted in their seats. When I turned 18, I continued. I was told no money had been saved for my college. Not because it wasn't possible, but because it was assumed I wouldn't go, or amount to much. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Gasps spread like a wave. My younger brother, I said, had a full college fund, a car, support, encouragement. I had 2 jobs and a choice: give up or figure it out alone. I paused, gripping the microphone a little tighter. "Pressure doesn't always build character," I said. "Sometimes it just shows you who's willing to let you struggle and who isn't." The moderator shifted uncomfortably beside me, but I kept going. "I'm standing here today because I learned to stop waiting for permission, to stop hoping someone else would decide I was worth investing in." I finally looked out into the crowd. My dad's face had gone pale. My mom stared straight ahead, lips pressed together. Ethan couldn't meet my eyes. "There are students here right now who were told they weren't enough," I said, softer now, "who were underestimated by the people who should have protected them. I'm here to tell you this being overlooked doesn't mean you're incapable. Sometimes it means you're stronger than they expected." For a second, no one moved. Then someone started clapping. Another joined in, then another. The applause grew uneven at first, then steady, filling the room until it felt like it was pressing in from all sides. I handed the microphone back with a polite nod and walked off the stage on legs that felt like they didn't quite belong to me anymore. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because behind me, everything they had believed, every quiet assumption, every casual dismissal had just been spoken out loud. And once the truth is public, it doesn't go back into hiding. The room felt different after that. Not louder, not quieter, just altered. Like something fundamental had shifted and everyone could feel it but didn't quite know how to name it. After the panel ended, students and parents crowded around the stage. A few people thanked me. One mother squeezed my hand and whispered, "My daughter needed to hear that." A freshman with shaking hands told me he'd almost dropped out before orientation even started. I listened. I nodded. I smiled when it felt right. What I didn't do was look for my family. They found me anyway. My mom reached me first, her face tight with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Harper," she said quietly, like we were in a grocery store and she didn't want to make a scene. "We need to talk." "Not right now," I replied just as quietly. My dad stood a few steps behind her, jaw clenched. Ethan hovered near the aisle, suddenly fascinated by his phone. "You didn't have to say it like that," my dad said, lowering his voice. "In front of everyone." I met his eyes. For the first time, I didn't feel small doing it. I didn't name you, I said calmly. I told my story. That story made us look bad, my mom snapped before she could stop herself. I took a slow breath. No, I said. It just made you visible. Ethan finally looked up. You embarrassed us, he muttered. I turned to him. You used my name without asking, I said evenly. You benefited from my silence for years. This is just the other side of that. No one argued after that. They didn't apologize either. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't open right away. We never meant to hurt you. We were just trying to motivate you. We're proud of you, you know. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then set my phone face down. Because pride offered after proof doesn't undo years of doubt. And explanations don't heal what neglect quietly erodes. That night, alone in my apartment, I realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt clear. They had finally seen me, but not on their terms. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. What came next wasn't revenge. It was something far more unsettling for them. It was distance with boundaries. Life didn't magically become easy after that day. I still worked long hours. I still budgeted carefully. I still felt tired in ways sleep couldn't always fix. But something fundamental had changed, something quiet and permanent. I stopped waiting for my parents to catch up to who I was becoming. When my mom called weeks later, her voice cautious, testing the ground between us, I answered politely but briefly. When my dad sent articles he thought might help my career, I thanked him and changed the subject. When Ethan texted like nothing had happened, I responded when I wanted to and didn't when I didn't. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I finished college on my own terms. I walked across the stage knowing every step that had led me there had been earned the hard way. When the diploma hit my hands, I felt something settle inside my chest, not pride fueled by validation, but relief fueled by truth. I sent my family a graduation announcement. Just a photo. No caption, no explanation. They never replied. And for the first time, that didn't hurt. Because I finally understood something they never taught me. Being underestimated doesn't make you weak. Being overlooked doesn't make you invisible. And being unsupported doesn't mean you're unworthy of success. I built my future without a safety net, without applause, without permission, and now, when I look ahead, I don't wonder who believes in me anymore. I already do.